Hello, this is Joe Pearson, the Planning Environmental Services Manager, and this is the presentation for the proposed revisions to the Planning Commission Rules and Procedures or bylaws. The Planning Commission bylaws establish the rules and procedures for the Planning Commission, including but not limited to the purpose of the organization, who are its members, how officers are elected and resign, how meetings are conducted, communication protocols, and rules of conduct. The Planning Commission has the ability to change their bylaws, provided that the bylaws are consistent with the Planning Commission's duties as outlined in the current bylaws. The Planning Commission's rules and procedures were last revised and adopted on July 18, 2019, to change the start time from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. On April 15, 2021, the Planning Commission requested a study session to review the Planning Commission's rules and procedures regarding the role of subcommittees, amendments of rules and procedures, and other general revisions. The Rules and Procedures Subcommittee was created by the Planning Commission on May 20th, 2021. The subcommittee met 5 times between the Planning Commission meetings starting June 3rd, 2021 through August 5th, 2021. On August 5th, 2021, the subcommittee moved to approve a resolution recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the revised bylaws. On August 19, 2021, the Planning Commission voted 6-0 with 1 commissioner absent to approve a resolution establishing the revised bylaws subject to approval by City Council. The proposed bylaws are a comprehensive update intended to reflect the best practices and procedures of the Planning Commission, including those imposed by Measure M. The update also reorganizes the bylaws into a more formalized layout, and the following slides summarize the primary changes by rule. Under Rule 1, this new section was added to establish the official title of the Planning Commission. Rule 2 was added to establish the purpose and intent of the proposed bylaws. Rule 3 was relocated from Section 1 of the current bylaws. The proposed bylaws adds the requirement that in addition to the bylaws, each new commissioner receive a copy of Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, and training on the Brown Act. The section also adds language that the Planning Commission adopts the bylaws to govern the conduct of its meetings, and all other requirements are consistent with current bylaws. Rule 4 was relocated from Section 2 of the current bylaws. The proposed bylaws formalizes the requirement to approve an annual calendar in the prior year. It also adds the requirement of the city's Sunshine Ordinance, which requires the legislative body and public receive the agenda and attachments 7 days before the regular meeting. All other changes are consistent with the current bylaws. Rule 5 incorporates existing language from sections 3 and 4 of the current bylaws, as well as new language. Section A has been added to address the general requirements for each public hearing, including who is responsible for presiding over the meeting and accessibility of the meeting. Section B establishes that a quorum consists of 4 commissioners, consistent with the current bylaws. However, the proposed bylaws adds a new procedure of what to do in the absence of a quorum due to absences. The proposed bylaws also adds procedural requirements for establishing a quorum when the absence of a quorum is the result of abstentions due to a conflict of interest. Section C is consistent with the requirements of the current bylaws. Section D incorporates the standard public meeting procedures, including rules for public comment, such as incorporating the 3-minute minimum time limit as required by Measure M. Section E is consistent with the current bylaws, but has been revised to clarify that the approval of the minutes shall occur within the consent agenda. Section F has been added to provide rules and procedures for ex parte declarations for public hearings. Sections G, H, I, and J are consistent with the current bylaws. Section K has been revised to change the adjournment time from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. unless extended by 2/3 of the Planning Commission present and eligible. This is consistent with the City Council procedures. Rule 6 was relocated from Section 5 of the current bylaws. The proposed section was added to reflect the goals and purpose of the Planning Commission as it relates to creating an open and public meeting. Paragraph 2 of Section B was added to allow for those making a threat of violence to be referred to the Oxnard Police Department. Section C has been updated to incorporate current practices. The primary changes include allowing for a 15-minute presentation by the applicant teams and allowing for both staff and the applicant to respond to any public testimony. Sections D, E, and F are consistent with the current bylaws. And after further review by city staff, as I will go into later in this presentation, staff is recommending one change to the language due to concerns over potential conflict with the Brown Act. Rule 7 was relocated from Section 6 of the current bylaws. Section A is consistent with the current bylaws. Section B was revised to add limitations on font size, spacing, and page limits on written materials submitted for public comment. However, as with Rule 6, after further review by city staff is recommending the removal of some of these restrictions due to concerns over potential conflicts with the Brown Act. Rule 8 was relocated from Section 7 of the current bylaws. This section has been revised to include rules and procedures for the election of chair and vice chair. This section has also been revised to include procedures for unanticipated vacancy, which allows for the Planning Commission to vote in a replacement who would serve until the next regular election. Language has also been added to establish protocols for what to do in the event both the chair and vice chair are absent. Lastly, procedures for the removal of an elected officer by at least 2/3 of the Planning Commission when all members are present has also been added. Rule 9 was relocated from Section 12 of the current bylaws. This section is generally consistent with the current bylaws, but has been revised to base the seating arrangement for all members except for chair and vice chair to be based on seniority. Rule 11 was relocated from Section 8 of the current bylaws and is consistent with the current bylaws. Rule 11 was added to establish the expectations for the decorum of the Planning Commission and require that they are familiar with the parliamentary procedures. Rule 12 was relocated from Section 9 of the current bylaws and is consistent with the current bylaws. Rule 13 was relocated from Section 10 of the current bylaws. This section has been revised to require that the subcommittee have a minimum of 2 members and clarify that the subcommittee is still subject to the Planning Commission and subject to the Commission's authority, direction, and rules. Rule 14 was relocated from Section 11 of the current bylaws and is consistent with the current bylaws. Rule 15 was relocated from Section 13 of the current bylaws and is consistent with the current bylaws. And Rule 16 was relocated from Section 14 of the current bylaws. This section is revised to include the requirement that upon adoption or amendment of the bylaws by the Planning Commission, the bylaws shall be presented to the City Council for adoption. As previously noted, following approval by the Planning Commission, the bylaws were reviewed by the City of Oxnard Attorney's Office. As a result of that review, staff is recommending minor changes to Rules 2, 5, 6, and 7 to address minor cleanups and possible conflicts with other legal requirements, such as the Brown Act. The red lines of these changes are provided in attachment 3 of the staff report. As shown, many of the changes are minor in nature and do not alter the substance of the proposed bylaws. Two changes that do result in substantive changes are in Rule 6B1 and Rule 7B1. Under Rule 6B1, staff is recommending the following change as shown on the screen. The change allows that the person may be barred from further communication with the commission during that meeting or be required to leave the meeting room, but allows the option for the person to remain. Again, this is to remove a potential conflict with the Brown Act. Under Rule 7B1, for similar reasons, staff is recommending that the following change occur: to remove the specific font, spacing, and page limitation changes, and allow for the public to provide the requested 15 copies, no larger than page is 11 by 17 of all written materials for members, the recording secretary, staff, file, and the public. However, the commission would still accept the documentation even if it did not comply with the specific language outlined here. Again, both of these edits are requested to address potential conflicts with the Brown Act, as it has the potential to limit the public's ability to participate in the public process before the Planning Commission. There's no financial impact associated with the approval of the Planning Commission bylaws. The Finance and Governance Committee approved 2-0, with one council member absent, on October 24, 2023, to approve the staff recommendation and forward the item to City Council for approval. Therefore, staff recommends that the City Council approve a resolution adopting proposed revisions to the Planning Commission rules and procedures or bylaws with the staff recommended changes.